April, so good to see you. Today, we're going to talk through why 60% of wealth transfers fail and the conversation that every family should have this holiday season. The holidays bring families together, multiple generations under one roof, which is why it's also a great time to talk about family finances and the legacy that you want to leave behind. So, I was surprised, April, to see that 60% of wealth transfers fall apart because of lack of communication and trust. Why is it so hard for families to have this conversation?
Well, nobody really wants to talk about death, and it can also be uncomfortable to talk about money. And this
Yeah.
conversation brings both of these things together. It's a difficult thing for the beneficiaries to bring up because a lot of times they don't want to seem like they're looking for money or being greedy. And it
Yeah.
can be a very difficult topic for the parent to broach as well because they're talking about their death. So it can just be a hard topic to broach, especially for the first time. But a lot of times, what we find is that once one of those parties does broach that topic, and we can come up with a lot of creative and simple ways to do that, it really becomes a lot easier after that first time.
And why might the holidays be one of the best times to have this conversation?
Well, everybody's together and it's not a time where it's already an acute situation
Yeah.
where, sometimes what we see, or even I'd say a lot of times what we see, is that someone falls very ill or receives a terminal diagnosis or is incapacitated in some way. And then the family is left grappling for trying to figure out where their documents are, what documents they did and did not have, if those documents are still valid, if those documents still reflect their wishes, if those documents are cohesive with or conflict their beneficiary documents. There are just so many moving parts. And when you're already in a very stressful situation, it's much more difficult to try to
Right.
put all of those pieces of the puzzle together. So even if it's just a lighthearted conversation, just to broach the topic when everybody's together and it's not a negative time, it can be a really good time just to broach that topic, even if just to say, let's schedule a time to talk about this.
Yeah.
I realize I don't really know what your wishes are, so I'd really love to talk to you about that. Let's go have coffee, or schedule a time to go through these things.
Wise words, my friend. And of course, we don't have to come to this with bank statements, but what information should parents or grandparents share with their adult children?
The more information, the more power there is. Multi-generational planning, where the beneficiaries are involved and understand where the accounts are, what the account types are, what tax ramifications there are for them in the future. All of those types of conversations can really make a much more successful multi-generational plan. But at
Mhm.
minimum, knowing what institutions to contact, where login information is for bank accounts and other investment accounts, knowing where life insurance policies are, if there's an estate plan or a will, where those documents are and who to contact. If there is a trusted advisor, that person really should know all of those pieces of the puzzle and
Right.
often even have copies and record of these things. So that
Right.
can often be, the best place to start. Who is that trusted contact? Who is the first person to reach out to when that time does come?
And what are the most important legal documents every family should review together?
Well, interestingly enough, statistics broadly will tell us that only about 30% of Americans have a will, and
Yeah.
somewhere around 10% have a trust. So that means then that the large majority of Americans don't have an estate plan of any kind, or a will or estate plan of any kind. So making sure that those documents are in place first and foremost, and then where to locate those documents is extremely important. Making sure that if you cross state lines, so if you move, or if your beneficiaries move, there can be different laws in different states that can impact how certain types of assets are received. For example, one that just came up yesterday when we were doing an estate plan was firearms. That's something that you cannot just simply pass through a will. You can actually end up breaking the law if you don't know how to appropriately cross state lines for that type of physical asset. So knowing all of those semantics in advance and having a plan for that, making sure that those documents are updated and cohesive for changing family matters, and beneficiary documents. Even if we can't just get the will done or get the estate plan updated, so to speak, and then say, okay, well, now everything is good across the board. Because if your beneficiary documents are not updated and they conflict with the will, what a lot of people realize is that those beneficiary documents will supersede anything that's in the estate plan. And that can also cause complications and rift. So it's really important to make sure all of those documents are reviewed frequently with a trusted team, and that they're up to date, and that the beneficiaries know where they are and what parties to contact.
And that's why I know estate planning is a priority for you and your clients. And you've been doing this for a while. So do you have any advice to help families keep these conversations positive instead of uncomfortable?
I often offer to be a scapegoat in these situations where, if I start to learn things about a family dynamic that maybe are difficult, I just will sit and say, you know what, blame me. Tell them that I'm the one that said that you need to talk about this, or that these are the questions that you should ask of your beneficiaries, and make sure they know who I am and where I am, how to reach me. But a lot of times what I find is having a third party to kind of almost put that off on is a really harmless way to broach that topic. And I'm happy to be that scapegoat.
Can I do it with my husband, April?
Anytime.
April tells me to do this. Well, you always give such good advice. And again, being that this is a family business for you, you understand how this can be emotionally charged, but also how important it is. So if somebody would like your help just to get that conversation started, what's the best way to reach you?
You can reach out to me at either office anytime, or through our website, theretirementfamily.com, through our contact us form. And we're happy to reach out and get a call scheduled and see what we can do to help.
Great. April, thank you.
Thank you, Erin.